Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Rising Latterly podcast. This is Arjun Sajdev.
And this is Jay Ballou. We hope you find something here that offers you new meaning or a fresh perspective.
If you do, we encourage you to give it life,
Be bold,
experiment,
and most importantly, bring it into the interactions with the people you surround yourself with.
and see what happens. Dr. Charlie Cartwright, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and I know Jay and I are super thrilled as well. So thank you for your time. We want to acknowledge your presence. You're an interesting gentleman. I know that I've been following you on LinkedIn for the last few months, and every single day, your dash cam wisdom definitely has something that you can pull from for the rest of the day. So it's such a great thing. I mean, how did that even start?
You know, it's amazing. That's a great question. And I remember I was doing these two-dimensional posts and where I'd find an image and I'd find a quote and marry them together and then, talk about it for a while. And some friends of mine kept telling me, hey, you need to start making videos. And I was really afraid to do that. And so then I started negotiating with a gentleman that's about 4 hours from where I live for studio time. And I was talking to my cousin in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. And I was like, yeah, I need to get this studio and this and that. And he said, hey, listen, Doc. He said, I work for a social media company here in Atlanta, Georgia. He says, we've got a soundproof, state of the art studio. We've got 8 camera angles. He said, and there's a 10-year-old girl sitting on the edge of her bed making videos that's kicking our butt. He said it's about your content, not your studio. He said just shoot them in your car. I mean, he literally said shoot them in your car. So I was like, okay. So I started shooting them in my, I just in the first month was May. I think I shot 2 videos, and in June, someone said I really love Dr. Charlie's Dashcam Wisdom.
Oh, there it is.
So then I was like, so then I made a joke. The next one, I said, well, hey, one of my folks in my network called this Dash Cam Wisdom. So this is the fourth edition and it's stuck, and, Gary Vee talks about one of the big things he does is listen. And so it's just listening. And I love the fact that it's taken off like this.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, even today's 4 or 5 minute clip was on trusting your wings. And in other words, not being married to things, looking for opportunities. Think about yourself as a bird. If a bird is on a twig that's about to fall, it kind of just flaps away and goes to the next twig. So the opportunities exist all around you. It's just a matter of, are you attached to what you're doing, or are you willing to take that flight to the next quote unquote twig or opportunity? And in that process, there's going to be times where you fall and fail and you'll have to grow from it. But trusting your wings was one from today. And I know you've done, getting through different types of no. You've done some on kindness, on communication, and you've done some on thoughts becoming action. So for anyone listening, I would say definitely log on to LinkedIn, follow Dr. Charlie Cartwright. And for those 4 to 5 minutes, it's a great way to start your morning. And if you're interested in the strong t-shirt game, he's got that as well. Um, but I know that's not all you do. You're a sought out, keynote speaker. You are also you founded the People Success Labs, and you've worked for almost 20 plus years in leadership positions across several Fortune 500 companies. So you've definitely seen a lot of things. You've had conversations with a lot of different personalities. So I thought it was appropriate to start today's conversation with the cultural environment in mind. And I kind of want to ask your thoughts on, what do you think about valuing human beings? And the reason I'm asking that is because the words empathy and compassion are kind of tossed around, but we're in a cancel culture, and with no remorse, people are just kind of taking people's freedoms away. And so I just want to know, how do you get to a more equal playing field in society?
That's a great question. And I've thought a lot about it, especially recently, because you're right. We're in this cancel culture and really cut and dry. It's either this or that, where there's no middle ground, no gray area. And one of the things that it's a quote I came across a few years ago and it really resonated with me. And the Dalai Lama said it. He said, our primary and purpose in life is to help other people. And he said, if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. And so a lot of people immediately think about physical violence when you're talking about not hurting them, but it goes much deeper than that. You know, if I say something negative to you or about you, to you directly or someone else, that hurts you. If I give you a mean look or display a nasty attitude towards you, that hurts you. And so in my mind, there's obviously plenty of opportunity for us to help other people with our service, with kindness, holding a door open. Maybe I'm going to bring some groceries to you. I cut your lawn if you can't do it, okay? But beyond that, when we come into each other's presence, whether it's physically or virtually through social media, my duty as a human being is for that to be a pleasant experience for you,
Hmm.
okay? And if I refuse to do that, or worse yet, do the opposite, then I'm doing a disservice to not only you but human beings at large, because we're all connected. Because if I really make you feel negative, then it's going to impact the people that you come into contact in the minutes and hours and days after that. However, if I leave you feeling good about yourself and good about your day, then that's going to also reflect in your conversations and your behavior towards other people. So there's a ripple effect. One's very negative and one's very positive. So my goal in my life, primary goal, is to make sure that I made a positive difference in the world while I'm here. Not that I haven't made mistakes, I've made plenty, but as I've matured and grown older in knowledge and wisdom and all those things, I see how huge these things are to people. Small acts for me to make a 3-minute video is I have a gift for it, and I have a talent, and I have technology and all these things, so I can use that. But I understand, for the right person, sometimes that video is so meaningful to their decision making, to literally their life. And I've received these messages, so I know. So I know how connected we are and how important it is just to elevate the human spirit. So looking for ways to elevate other human beings. And when you elevate others, guess what happens? You have to go up there with them. You can't
Exactly.
elevate others unless you're already elevated. And again, you can't bring other people down unless you're already down there.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah, and I think one of the things you hit on was the idea of how connected we all are and how one act of kindness or one act of meanness can ripple through a group of people. And I think it's especially true in organizations. Like if you have that one incredibly narcissistic or Machiavellian person, even if they're a high performer, if they're putting everyone else around them down, that's a net loss for the organization. I think management doesn't always see how having those personality types really can ripple out in negative ways into the organization at large around them. And conversely, people, that are spreading, high amounts of positivity and are really carrying themselves as a kind person who's valuing the people around them, the people that they work with, the people that are part of their team, that has, I would argue, immeasurable positive, benefits for the organization as well.
Yeah, I would agree, Jay. And I created this tool, and it's an organizational value impact tool. And basically what it does is it takes people and it shows the impact that they're having on an organization as a whole. However, and so there's all these things where it's experience, tribal knowledge, relationships, there's all these things you can measure, education, all these things. But the exponent to all of it is people skills. Okay. And so you could have all this education and all this tribal knowledge and all this industry experience, but your people skill could be so poor that it could actually reduce your score because of your impact. Where you have someone that has maybe a very simple job on the surface, where they're support staff and they don't have a big title, but they're the person that brings in the cookies. They're the person that remembers your birthday. They're the person that puts together the potluck. They're exponential to everyone else's attitude, everyone else's productivity, everyone else's loyalty. They're an exponent. And so those people are huge, even though they have a small salary and low status. And that's not recognized. Okay. Like to your point, in corporate America, it's really missed. And then one of the analogies I love to use is this. I say it all the time. People walk past Clark Kent every day looking for Superman. Okay.
Mm.
Right in front of them.
Yep.
That woman is Superwoman, but she doesn't look like Superwoman. So people pass right past her. But she keeps doing all these amazing things. She's a part of it. She's a catalyst. They wouldn't happen without her. And so that's looking beyond, but that's again, this is experience and knowledge and learning and growing and researching, but that is huge. What you just said is so big.
So then how should organizations start to identify that type of talent? Because there's a common thread around a hiring manager will take a lot of pride in a good hire, and then you rarely hear them ever say, oh, that was a bad hire. So how should we start to identify that type of talent?
What is it? What is it? Success has many fathers and failures an orphan, right? Failure's an orphan. No one's claiming that.
Yeah.
That's a great line. That is very
Right?
true.
It's
Yeah.
so true. And so it's interesting whenever I travel and speak to organizations, I'll ask them this question, and to date, no one has nailed this one yet. But my question is, what is the number one characteristic that you look for in a new hire? Number one character above it all beyond. It all come down to work ethic or experience or education or specific expertise. No one says people skills. No
Mhm.
one's ever said that to me. That's number one. If I don't have that, we can't talk any. Can't
Yep.
be on the team. Okay. Then now, okay, you've got that. If I have that organically, and I put together a group of people with that high level of empathy, of humanity, understanding people, liking people, all the team building stuff, it happens organically. Okay, the cohesion happens organically, collaboration happens organically. Now let's look at your skill set and your experience, your education, all that. After that fact, that's number one. So when you're going to hire, that's what I'm looking for. And you've got to be able to understand the questions to ask to be able to tease that out to see if, in fact, they're that kind of person and what kind of vibe are they putting off. And that's big because when you look at if you look at professional sports, I don't care if you're talking about a hockey team, football team, soccer, American football, baseball, basketball, the best teams win. And all those teams, when you find out about them, they're having dinner, they're doing things off the field together, they're tight knit. So then they come together at game time and produce. It's the same thing within organizations that are really successful. You're going to find there's all these tight knit groups within, and it makes each individual better than collectively than they would be individually.
Yeah,
That
there's
makes
a
a lot of sense.
chemistry.
Big time.
Yeah. And is that something that you can sort of try to look for in the interview process, or is there a system that maybe you could give us a glimpse into as to how you discern whether or not someone has those skills when you're considering bringing them into your organization?
Yes, and so it's just there's just so many nuances to it, and when they're interacting with you, then when you're tuned into it, and it takes practice. It takes, I mean, I've interviewed thousands of people, and so I know because I've interviewed thousands of people that there's things that I'm looking for as far as their mannerisms. How do they treat the receptionist? How have they dealt with everyone throughout? Right? If we say, hey, we're gonna before a hire, a lot of times, well, hey, let's go meet for coffee or breakfast, lunch, whatever. How are they dealing with the wait staff?
Mm.
Right? How are they dealing with, the janitor comes through? How do they deal with them? Right? And you can make sure that these interactions happen. Okay, there's a way
Oh.
to happen. There's a gentleman I remember telling him because he was really high detail. And I said they got to be exceptionally detailed. I said, okay, next time you have an interview, when you invite that person in their office, have a piece of paper on the floor that they have to step over. He said, if they step over that piece of paper without picking it up, how detailed are they? But that's me. I got to pick that piece of paper up. I'm sorry. Hey, is this
I like
yours? If
that.
it's not,
Yeah.
I got to throw it. Where's the nearest trash can? I'm not going to step over it or step on it. And so just little things like that go a long way because they give you a mirror into an individual because we're all very, very complex. But when people have that preparation, they're zeroed in on that interview. And so you got to get them out of their prep so that you see who they really are. And there's ways to do that.
Interesting. And another way, you mentioned practice, the word practice a couple times. I think another way is to just start practicing like what it must feel like to be XYZ or in ABC situation. Start to put yourself in those moments or put yourself in those people's shoes and literally start to envision it. And I think that might be something that people can start practicing. So I know Lex Friedman, who, has his own podcast, recently talked about this, and he said, I'm practicing like putting myself in the shoes of a police officer and trying to understand their life given all the things that are going on, and vice versa on both sides. So just another thing in terms of practicing and developing your people skills.
Here's something else too. I'll mention, and this is kind of getting into some of the complexities of this. But I am a my doctorate is in chiropractic, and so when you first start that, I remember going through training, and you have to be able to palpate someone's spine and find an abnormality. Okay, and I remember when I was first doing practicing it, I was like, I don't feel anything. I'm gonna be the worst chiropractor ever. Then as you advance your skill set, you guys may have never seen one of these phone books, the yellow pages. You may have never seen one in your life, but the yellow pages were very, very paper thin phone book. And so when you get really skilled in your palpation, you can have your eyes closed and you can feel over a sheet of paper, a yellow page really thin, and you can find a hair underneath that paper because
Mm.
Whoa.
you've developed your skill. Okay, so as human beings, what happens though when you're a new student, you ignore it. You're like, that's not it. That's not it. When it is it, you have to trust it. Okay, so now human beings, there's this Heart Math Institute that talks about our heart and how, our heart encases 40,000 neurons. And there's this magnetic field that our cranial brain generates, but our heart generates a magnetic field 5,000 times stronger in amplitude.
No
Okay.
way. Wow.
Yes. So when you're in the presence of another human being, there's a vibration there. Okay. And it's interesting when two people get into a deep conversation, their respiration synchronizes and their heart rates synchronize. Okay. That's how connected we are as human beings. So when you're in that space, you're going to feel things. You got to trust what you're feeling because it's not your imagination. Then over time, you learn to tune into it. So it's so fascinating. I remember I went into this. I had a pitch that I've written this graphic novel, and I've got a kind of a character, and I wanted this person that's an influencer to be the the main character in this graphic novel. So I had approached her, and she said, "Well, let me think about it, and I got to talk with my boyfriend, who's also my business partner." I said, "No problem. Give me a month." So I come back in a month, and I remember, and she owns this supplement store. And I remember coming in the store, and her boyfriend was there, and she had a dog under the counter. So the dog runs right out of it. He's all over me, and I'm petting him and things like that, talking to him. She said, "Oh, I don't want to get your suit dirty." I'm like, "No, no problem." Well, the boyfriend turns around, and I'm looking at the dog, and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna go get something to eat." And he walks past me. He walked behind me, and I remember he didn't say a word to me.
Mm.
I don't know if he looked at me or not. I didn't look at him. I just saw him perfect. But that vibe was so negative from him that I already knew what she was going to say, you
Oh
know?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I've never had anybody walk past me without saying anything. I didn't make eye contact and rub me the wrong way before, but it did. It was just a bad vibe. And, but you got to tune into those things
Yeah. And uh,
as an interviewer, and you get that skill you'll develop.
yeah, it takes 33 milliseconds to tell. I
Yeah.
Exactly.
know.
It's like that. Yeah. 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 0.033 milliseconds. That's correct.
And that's to tell if someone's being sincere. Is that right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we know we definitely do communicate on many more levels than just verbal communication. There's so much there if you tap into it and really trust your intuition. I don't know. I feel we've talked about this in a past episode about how intuition versus reason, or irrationality versus rationality. Those kinds of softer skills have been devalued, but there really is something there, and there is kind of ancient wisdom in that if you listen to those things, that those sensors that are being triggered on like a really deep seated biological level.
100%. The gut, people say, my gut told me this or that. Now we know that there are 500 million neurons located in the gut. And so your gut instinct is a real thing. And what we know, this is new science. We don't know a ton yet, but what I've been able to find is that your gut, when you meet a human being, your gut compares them to every other person you've met in your entire life, and it
Wow.
and it lumps them, and so it puts them here or here, and you're given that instinct for a reason, right? And so we've got to trust those things. It's not hocus pocus; it's real science, but we just need to learn it and tap into it.
Yeah, and start to empower people to
Yes,
actually learn how to connect because Jay and I are big believers, and it sounds like you are too, in the larger collective, and that we have a
yes,
shared experience. And there's something around this idea that we don't empower people enough, in my opinion, from what I've seen, um, to connect with people. There's this element of like in organizations, I don't know why it feels like there's a block in terms of really connecting with people. Have you been able to think about that or try to crack that? Why can't
yes.
people in the corporate world be more authentic with each other?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's so valid. And and I have cracked it for organizations that are forward thinking and bring me in, and so it's the model that, and I call it the three brain, one mind model. Okay, cranial brain, 86 billion neurons. Everybody knows about that one. Heart brain, 40,000 neurons. We're starting to understand it. Gut brain, 500 million neurons. So literally, we're a super organism with three brains, but the three brains make up one mind.
Hmm.
Okay. So now, if I want to connect with you, I need to line those three brains up. Then guess what? You make up your mind that, hey, I trust Dr. Charlie. I feel good, comfortable with Dr. Charlie. But if you are in conflict, you're like, I just can't make up that my mind, then that means one of those three minds are not convinced, at least, right? And so it doesn't make sense, right? That's left, that's left brain. Doesn't make sense. It's got to make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then right brain, it's got to be interesting. Then heart brain, my heart's not in it. You've heard people say it, my heart's just not in it. I don't feel it. And then gut, I'm comparing this to every other experience I've had in my life, and it lines up. We line those three up, we've got a true connection with another human being. And I think there's a fear of vulnerability in that. And this is so old think, outdated thinking, but a lot of executives still believe this. If I'm too nice to my people, they'll take advantage of me. I mean,
Mm.
this is still the mindset out there, right? If I'm too nice, they'll take advantage of me. And my answer is always the same. If you're treating someone with love, care, respect, appreciation, and they take advantage of you, that means they've self-selected themselves off your team.
Oh, there
I
you
don't,
go.
you
Yeah.
don't need to you don't need to raise your voice, right? They can't work here.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's not optional. Here's how we do it. We're going to do things the right way, and if you're going to abuse that, you're not going to be able to stay on this team. Very simple.
Yeah.
And most people that will resonate with, and they will, hey, I've got a great thing here. I want to keep it. And then the people that are abusing it, everybody else on the team's tired of it too. They don't want them on the team because they're not helping us. So release them to the competition. That's the thing that you do.
Yeah, I remember watching one of your talks on Disrupt HR, and maybe you can finish the story for me here. I'm sure you remember it. In one of your videos, you discuss asking a room full of CEOs, "Do you love your people?" Can you tell us a little bit about what happened when you asked that question?
Man, I was in Washington D.C. and I had just completed my first round of research on love and its impact on human beings. And it's just a four small things that love, four small ways that love impacts human beings. And this is from the University of North Carolina. Love impacts everything human beings think, feel, do, and become. And so you ask exactly how would you like to impact everything your people think, feel, do, and become? Oh man, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Gotta love them. And I remember asking that question in a room full of CEOs in Washington D.C. Do you love your people? And I mean, talk about sucking the oxygen out of a room. I mean, it got quiet real quick, and people were looking down and looking away, and I must have been in an ornery mood that day because I didn't let them off. Usually I didn't let them off the hook. I waited, and I don't know. It felt like a couple of minutes went by, and then I said, "Hey, this is not a rhetorical question. I'd like an answer." And and then I would start looking around, and people are looking down at their shoes, and everybody's looking down. And so then I was like, I made a really bad joke. I said, "Hey, I see so many people looking at the floor that I'm assuming, man, someone's lost a set of keys. And if you've lost a set of keys, identify yourself because I want to help you find it." Now, that did not go over, did not appreciate that joke. And I remember a CEO from the back row. Of course, it's always somebody from the back, right? He said, "This is ridiculous." Because, we're minutes in to this question now. "This is ridiculous." I said, "It's ridiculous." He says, "Yeah, it's ridiculous." I said, "Why? Why is it ridiculous?" He said, "Of course we love our people." I said, "Okay, of course you do." "Yeah." I said, "I got one more question for you." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Do they know
Mhm.
it?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He got quiet because if you don't show it, they don't know it. Don't tell me that. If your people don't know, they need to know unequivocally. Okay, how do we do that? And so we can map to that. And there's ways to do that. And I'm talking about in a professional way, and I'm defining love as in this way of I'm defining love. It's an unselfish concern, care, and concern for the well-being of another human being. That's what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Can you do that? Can you do that? Okay. And one of my guys today posted, and he said, "Kindness is love is visible. It makes love visible. Kindness."
Hmm.
I mean, like, wow, that's profound. You
For
know.
sure.
So, can you be kind to your people? I mean, is that too much to ask? And this is really the way of the future. This is the way of the 21st century leader, right? Because it's not about browbeating and intimidating. It's about caring, loving, and supporting. And now we release. If you have all this potential, let's release it, and people will blow you away with how much they can do. And what it's amazing when you just release them.
It's so true. And I wonder if you're finding that that's easier to implement in a smaller company, maybe a startup, as opposed to some company with 10,000 employees and, 20 different countries. And then it may also tap into realizing why your team is going the extra mile.
Exactly. And the great news in this is whether it's a small team or a large team, this behavior, it works like a virus. Is it too soon to say that? Is it too soon?
No.
But it works like a virus. It really spreads quickly. You'd be shocked how quickly it spreads when people see that it's real and they see leaders demonstrating these behaviors. It spreads very, very quickly. And so numbers turn. So I always tell my clients, they say, "Well, how soon are we going to see change?" I said, "Within the first 90 days." They're like, "What?" Because see, that flies in the face. Consultants are always, here's what a consultant will say. It's like a ship, and it's gonna
Oh.
slowly turn. And I said, as soon as they tell you that, they don't know what they're talking about. You need to show them the door. They don't know what you're talking about. 90 days, you're gonna start to see changes, noticeable changes, and then as the days go by, those changes get greater and greater to see. And it's exciting because it's the right way to do business. It's a right way to treat other people. So it's sustainable. And it is really exciting the results that I've seen people achieve. And then of course leading teams myself, I've seen it as well. So it's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. Do you think most people are hardwired to show kindness? They've just never seen the value in it or been coached to see the value in business? Or why do you think, I take a pretty optimistic view on humanity. I feel like most people I've met have a kind of ingrained kindness in them. Why do you think it's not really been brought to the surface in the business context?
I think our society, people have been conditioned to believe that it's weakness, right?
Mm.
Kindness is weakness. Oh, you're soft. Oh, people keep calling them soft skills, but they're so soft. And why are these tough guys having a hard time doing it? If it's so easy, right? And so they may be soft skills, but they're not easy to master. And so the great leaders, though, find a way to master them. But yeah, our society, this warrior mentality and tough, suck it up, all that stuff. And we know that that is not sustainable. It's very clear that that's not sustainable. And the really strong people are feel good enough about themselves and comfortable in their own skin, so that they let people really see who they are, right? And so when we give people permission to do that, their greatness is locked up. And so when we give them permission, now all of a sudden their greatness comes out. That's when Clark Kent goes in the phone booth and boom, Superman. Oh, well, he was already in there. He got permission to come out. So that's what I've seen.
Yeah, and also just like thinking about, experience, it's like, is there really a kind way to tell someone that they haven't hit their metrics or hit their goals? I mean, if there is, it usually isn't in a genuine way,
hmm So here's the thing about that. Even if I have to fire someone, I can be kind.
Mm.
right?
I can be
It's a
kind.
choice.
It's a choice. I don't have to raise my voice. And I remember my youngest daughter. So I have four kids, three girls and one boy. And my youngest daughter, probably from an academic standpoint, is the most gifted. And they're all very smart, but she's just the most gifted when it comes to that. And so I remember one day she came home with her grade card and she had all these A's and there was one C.
Mm.
And this was before she went into high school. And so this is the last grade card of the year. She got a C in a class she didn't like. And I said to her, just like this, I said, next year these grades start to count. And we both know that this C, you can do better. We both know. You you would have thought that I hit her in the head with a board. She went to her mom and dad said this and what'd you say? I repeated just what I did. It's very kind, but the message got through. And so she actually graduated high school a year early.
Oh,
Wow, good for her.
wow.
A
That's awesome.
year early. She's super smart, but again, I didn't have to stand over her and point my finger. All I had to say was, we both know that you
That's
can do
great
better.
language.
We
Yeah,
both
that's
know.
really, really great
You know
language.
what I mean? And that just, because she knew I was telling the truth, and she didn't like the teacher. She says, okay, that's it. I'm not going to participate. What do I need? You know what I mean? I guarantee you. So we can be kind in those things. And even when we have to deliver, unfavorable news or discipline, we can be kind. I remember this one time I was working for this insurance brokerage firm and we had a big pitch. I was in work comp post injury management. And so it was one of his larger clients. And we had this pitch for this work comp program. And so I had went in. Well, their insurance carrier, because we were a broker, so the carrier was at the meeting. And some of the metrics I was looking at, and it was when the injuries were reported, I was saying that the injuries were being reported on time, and then there was a lag between when the employer got the message of the injury and when the carrier got it. The carrier was saying, "Oh no, you know, the employees aren't telling you for 2 weeks, then they come," and so those are diametrically opposed. And it's the carrier, okay? And so we're in this meeting, and I'm at opposition with them. So that's how the meeting ended. So I remember the salesperson, they call them producers. The producer called me after this, and he says, "Listen, you do realize that this is my largest account." "Yes, sir." "And you do realize that if we are wrong in this case, that it's really looks unfavorably upon our expertise and our pitch." And it was like a $250,000 deal. He said, "And our pitch will not be accepted. Are you comfortable with that?" So I just want you to, and I mean, he was just so kind. And when I hung up the phone, I just felt beat up, So, so then I remember going downstairs to my data analytics group, and of course, about a week later, that carrier sent an apology letter. that was very
Mm.
detailed. And I'm thinking to myself, those are your numbers. How can you mess them up? I'm just interpreting. You know what I mean? They misinterpreted their own numbers. But that producer really taught me a lesson because even if I had made a mistake and we lost $250,000, which would be big, the way he delivered that information, I got the message, but he was very kind, didn't raise his voice, didn't make any accusation, no name calling. He was just laying out the facts. And he's calmly assertive. And so I
Amazing.
understood completely the, that he was not happy.
Yeah.
But then we celebrated when I was right afterward.
Nice.
I
Nice.
was I hung up the phone. I was concerned. I was like, because I triple check, I quadruple check numbers, and I was like, how could I have missed that? I didn't miss that. And so I'm glad I didn't in that case. So
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when you're kind and when you keep your cool, when you're delivering news to people, it kind of forces them to look in the mirror if their emotions get elevated, if they overreact. So if you're meeting someone with kindness and they're coming back at you with aggression, it's kind of like, hey man, we're not, in an argument here together. We're not duking it out. I'm coming to the table with positive energy. You're coming to the table with negative energy. And even if the aggressor might not see it in that situation, chances are they'll see it after the fact. So I feel like a really powerful way to come out, in a strong position if you're at loggerheads with someone is by maintaining that calm, kind, cool disposition.
yeah, it takes the starch right out of it because it takes two to really escalate that, and so it just takes the starch right out of it, and people generally will de-escalate pretty quick when you don't match that energy.
And then that's
Totally.
how you can get some performance too. If you can stay centered,
Yes.
you can have that reflective period, which probably leads to a more creative outcome later with some more intuition behind it as well. So you're going to be achieving a higher level of performance across the board.
I remember I took over a terminal at FedEx, and it was a red zone facility, and so at FedEx ground, and the contractors, they're contractors, they're not employees, drivers. And so a red zone terminal is a terminal that they feel like is at risk for union takeover because leadership has been poor when that happens. So I went in there. And so I was maybe 2 months into my tenure and there was a problem. And I remember and I didn't realize you know, he was an informal leader at the time, but there was an issue and he caught me right at the peak of the morning dispatch, right in the middle of the facility. And I mean, he is swearing and he's in my face. And I was calm, and he kept, and then I mean the whole place stopped, and everybody's watching. And then I remember handling that, and I said, "Hey, I'll have this handled for you by the," because there was money missing off his check, and he said, "This is the same old thing. You're no different than the others." And I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna fix this for you, and I'll have it, I'll have a check overnighted to you, so it'll be here tomorrow, and all this." And I remember just handling it that way, and I had a conference call to jump on. And so I remember this conference call was an hour long, and dispatch had happened, over an hour ago. And I remember coming out and opening my door, and that man was standing outside of my door. He waited an hour to apologize to me, and that was the tipping point of that facility. And we ended up being number one in the nation. I can't remember if we were number one or number two in the nation that year. I think we finished number one in the nation that year statistically. They have all these numbers, and but that was a tipping point of handling those situations right. And then the people say, "Hey, I can trust you," and then all of a sudden they give you all that. What is it called? Discretionary effort.
There you go. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you also don't know what somebody's been through or going through. Like that person berated you in the middle of the hall or middle of the floor, but maybe they had a fight with their wife the night before. And
Yes.
it's one of those things where I've been having more of these types of conversations with people around like, just control what you can control. Even if you're out there trying to get a new job or something, it's like you may think you're the most qualified candidate, but there's 100 other people applying for it. You don't know what the HR manager's gone through. Same thing happens with judges. You don't know what the judge went through the night before your sentencing or anything like that. So there's so much out of people's control. Just control what you can control. And
Yep.
that's how you can stay centered or, develop a trust and all that stuff.
All the time. Yeah, you're right. And when you take that approach, then it does. You take your power back. When you take that approach because I can control my response to all these things, regardless of what's happening externally tomorrow, with the election, regardless of that outcome. This is who I am, and I'm going to continue my life as such. There are other people that on Wednesday, they're going to be complaining and fighting, and it's just I'm like, you're going to do this for another 4 years, and that's not a life I'm interested in living. So I need to control. I've made my vote, and then I need to do my job. Everyone else needs to do their job, and I can't be concerned with things that I don't control. I've done my part, and that's it.
Yeah, one of the things that came up in a previous episode was the idea of having an inner locus of control. We had a depth psychologist on, and she was talking about how people that have gone through very traumatic situations that come out still are able to live fulfilled, healthy lives, typically have a very strong sense of that inner locus of control. So instead of saying, I'm just one grain of sand in a desert, the wind's going to blow me around, I can't control. There's so many big events going on in the world that influence my life that I have no control over. I'm just going to kind of lay down on my back. These people say, no, I still have some control over the people that are in my life. I may not be president of the United States, but there's still some, part of my life that I do have control over that I am responsible for. And I think that's exactly what you're describing now. And it's ultimately really the only way to live, I think, if you want to maintain your sanity in turbulent times.
100%. And I know this for sure. There's people that don't want to talk to me and don't want to interview me and don't want to do business with me, and that's fine. All the people that would love to talk to me and would love to do business with me, I'll never get to all of them in my lifetime.
Mm.
It's not physically possible. So I'm going to focus on those folks. You know what I mean? I want to
Yep.
focus on those folks. The other people, I can't, there's nothing I can do there. And so I have no power and authority. But here, people are open and willing. Then that's where I need to pour my time and attention and energy into. And then hopefully, again, that ripple happens and you're going to dilute all the negativity over time. We'll dilute it. We might not eliminate it, but we'll dilute it.
Hmm.
I'm super interested in like where does Dr. Charlie's thinking take him? So when you're not in front of a camera, or you're not being interviewed, or you're not doing dash cam wisdom, I mean, what are you thinking about?
Wow, that's a great question because I do a lot of thinking, and I'm just grateful for so many things. And it sounds strange that the negative things that happen in your life you be grateful for.
Mm,
But I am. I had a traumatic childhood, and my father was he's an alcoholic, and he wasn't a good person. And I was just talking to someone last week about this, and I said, you know what though, he had to be that guy for me to be this guy. He had to be. I'm not this guy, and I just I feel like I have a lot of empathy for other people because I wasn't shown any much. I have a lot of love for other people because I wasn't shown much. I'm kind to other people because I wasn't shown that, right? And so I know what it feels like. And so I don't want anybody to feel like that ever if I have anything to do with it. So I think about those things. And my grandmother, she really poured into me, and my grandfather poured into me. And so I want to make sure that with whatever life I have, that I want to honor their effort, that they would be proud of who I became, what I became, right? And then I also just am really passionate about impacting this world in a positive way. How can I do that better? And then I have all this knowledge, okay, that I've acquired through trial and tribulation and learning. How can I make sure that gets passed on?
hmm
Okay. And then we have this, a friend of mine said this so well. We're all born with these seeds, right? These seeds of potential. And she said to me one time, really got emotional. She said, I don't want to die with my seeds in my pocket. And
That's
um, I,
powerful.
I think about that too. So those are the things I think about, and that I have what you've seen. I have so much more potential than what's even been seen. And so, how can I what can I do to get that out? And I think the answer is to just be more of who I am, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
not I'm not trying to be Les Brown. I'm not trying to be Tony Robbins, but I want to be Dr. Charlie, and there's only one. Okay, and I'm unique, just like everybody else. Okay,
Yep.
so I want to maximize what I do, and I think that touches the most people. And so those are the things that really are on my mind. And I want to, my family history. There's only I think three of us. I'm talking about the Cartwright line that graduated college. Three. So we've been in this country for I don't know 150 years, and in 150 years we only have 3 degrees. I really want to change that because I feel like a lot of the and I don't call them a generational curse; they're generational bad habits. I want to
Hmm.
change those bad habits, and I think the way to do that is through education, and that you get exposed to things. So I really want to. One of the things I think about is setting up this endowment to where if you can prove that you're in this family, you can go to college. Okay,
Mm.
I just want to do that, and um, it gets me choked up a little bit,
I understand.
but I see this in my mind clearly. This is after I'm dead and gone. There'll be a there'll be a young mother. She got pregnant when she was 14, 15, and she's got this 5-year-old little girl. And it's the first day of school. And she's getting her ready, and she's going to say to her, "Hey, if you do a good job in school and you stay out of trouble, you're going to go to college someday." And she's going to go to school the first day and say, "I'm going to college." That's what she's going to know in her mind. That's going
Yeah.
to happen. That's going to happen. So
That's a huge
I've
mental
already seen
shift.
it. I've already seen it. It's going to happen. And that's how you change these outcomes for families. It's through education. It's not through a handout or any of these things. It's through education, and that money is for education. I don't care. Somebody wants to be a career student. I don't care. Be a career student. That's fine. Because you're going to be a better person at the end of it because you get exposed to all these ideas. And sooner or later, they're going to say, well, wait a minute. I went to school with Jay and he running this company. He wasn't smarter than me. Wait a minute. I would I could do it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
They're going to see that. Now, wait a minute. I thought all these people that ran these companies were some kind. Wait a minute. I got a better grade in geometry than he did.
yeah, for sure.
They're going to see that. So those are the things. Some of the things I think about.
That's
Uh,
very powerful. And you're exposing them to the world, and the world is but a school of inquiry. And
exactly.
I have to say one thing around the childhood comment that you made, because I've also noticed that if it wasn't for the environment that I grew up in, I wouldn't have been. I'm not going to be. I wouldn't be who I am today. And it's like there was tough times, and I would say that I'm having these conversations with a lot of people. I don't know if it's a 2020 thing or what, but there's a lot more males that are acknowledging their own daddy issues. And it's showing me that people are becoming more open minded, and embracing some of the vulnerability in their life. And I think it's just a step in the right direction for humanity to have this type of conversation.
I agree. I was at a retreat about a month ago in Pennsylvania, and it was men, and one of the gentlemen, and the guy is, he's going to be the fire chief in some town, and here's this, this guy is just like a man's man, just strapping, strong, and we went on a hike, he had the rucksack, he's 30 pounds, he's carrying, he's walking, and we'd walk. He's always going extra. And for this guy to sit down and talk about how his father treated him and to see his eyes well up, this guy's 50 years old, and he's been out of his dad's house for 30 years, but how his father treated him is still impacting him. And of course, in negative ways, and he's working through those things because he didn't realize how his drive and determination was coming off towards his family
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
good. But
Mm-hmm.
he'd not been modeled anything good. And as men, we don't want to. We're not. Everything's fine. No one knows, and then you go
Mm-hmm.
home and you're not treating your family well, and you don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And so I was just struck by that. That here's this guy, but there's that little boy inside still, right?
So yeah, so we on that topic, we have a lot of listeners in their late 20s, early 30s. It sounds like you've really kind of figured out why you're here, what you want your legacy to be. You figured out that being more of who you are is the best path forward in life. What advice might you give to someone, 20 or 25 years your junior right now that has a whole life ahead of them and that's still maybe sorting out what that path looks like?
That I think a lot of times we tell people we get told by someone else, sometimes experts or someone in an authority figure, that you're not enough, you're not good enough. There's all this negative, you suck, you stink, all those things. And you know what? It's not true. It's absolutely categorically not true. They have no idea what you can be. They have no idea what your potentials are. I was just in a meeting last week with a gal I have a ton of respect for, human resources in this organization. It's one of my clients. She's she double majored in college, and she said, "Yeah, my high school teachers told me that I would never get a degree." And that one of her high school teachers said, "I would never get a degree, and I would never amount to anything." A teacher told her that. And so she says, I've been so tempted to make a copy of my degrees and send it to him. But it's something that drives her. But if she would have really internalized that and let that become her, her inner dialogue, she wouldn't have achieved those things. And so you have to be able to see beyond that and go beyond that. And just because other people don't see your vision doesn't mean your vision isn't valid. And they can't see the vision because um, because it's yours. And so it's so interesting that why are we asking advice of people who are not qualified to give it, right? We have this dream and vision, and I want to start this business, and we're talking to people that have never run a business. That doesn't make any sense. If you want to understand being an entrepreneur, you need to go find some entrepreneurs and talk to them. Not your dad, not your cousin, not your uncle or your aunt or whoever that hasn't done it. So that was the thing, is that believe in your vision, believe in you, you know, I mean, bet on you. Okay. That's the key, because you have control of that individual at all times, and then just invest in you, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I buy all these books. I mean, I went shopping. Yeah, this weekend I went to the bookstore, and I bought 3 books, and they're gonna make me better. They're gonna make me smarter, right? I didn't buy a pair of Nikes. I bought some books, and the return on investment to those are astronomical.
Yeah. What were they? Do you mind sharing them?
Yeah, I bought. So it's interesting that Jocko Willink has a new book out, and so I bought that book, and then I bought The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, but it's been updated. That is one of the most powerful books that's out there. And then I bought a book on kindness. Actually, it's the Harvard Business Review has an edition on kindness, and they go into depth on research into kindness. So I'm really fascinated by that. So I saw an interview years ago with a really influential gentleman, and he was talking about reading, and they asked him how, because he's a legendary reader, and they were asking him about reading, and he reached in. It was Bob Proctor, and he reached into his bag, and he says I carry these 2 books with wherever I go. One was Think and Grow Rich by
Mm.
Napoleon Hill, and the other was Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Well, I'd never heard of Power of Subconscious Mind. I was watching on YouTube. I stopped it. I called him, and I went down. He had one copy, and I drove to Barnes and Noble and picked it up. So, but I've given it away a few times, so I update. I keep going back. Well, Law of Power. I mean, Think and Grow Rich. This video was decades ago. He said at that point he'd read the book 332 times.
What? That's a
Right,
legendary reader.
Yeah.
right. But see, in school, what were we taught? We go through a textbook and we set it down. We don't go through it again.
Mm.
But these really advanced folks, they reread these books over and over again. And every time you read it, you find another lesson. How did I miss this the last time? Deeper understanding, deeper understanding. So I remember John Madden. I used to be a huge football fan, and John Madden told a story. He was a Hall of Fame coach for the Raiders, and he told a story when he was a young college coach. He went to a seminar, a clinic that Vince Lombardi taught.
Oh, nice.
And he said, of course, he said, I'm a young guy, thought I knew everything. He said, I sat in the back of the room. He said, it's Vince Lombardi up there. He said, I sat in the back of the room. I don't know what I was thinking. But he said he got up there and he started talking. He drew up the Green Bay Power Suite. That was their bread and butter play. And you've probably seen the films, you know, get a seal here and a seal here, and you run the ball in the alley. And it's a famous video out there. He said Vince Lombardi lectured on that play for 4 hours. He says we took a lunch break, we ate some sandwiches, and he came back and he lectured on it for another 4 hours. He talked 8 hours on one play. He said at that point, he said, I knew I didn't know a lot about football. So if we're talking about lecturing on one play in football for 8 hours, how much more complex is life? And how much time do we spend understanding people, really diving into our craft, what we know? So when I sit down with another human being, or I sit down with a potential client or a client, I'm bringing that approach so that I've just gotten so deep into whatever issue they're challenged with that I have those answers at the ready and I can really help them. And so that is another thing that drives me is this learning. I just love to learn. And so, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm one of these people that I hate to sleep. I wish I didn't have to. And I just get tired. I was like, okay, that's it. I got to go to bed. If I didn't have to sleep, I would never sleep because I just want to learn some stuff. I want to do, I want to do something or learn something. And so the only thing preventing me is I gotta sleep, and it's
Yeah.
important for your health. And so I've got some friends that are holding me accountable, making sure I sleep more. But man, I just love learning.
You
So
know, to think about it like this, the more you sleep, if you get your sleep, you'll learn more.
it's
Um,
true.
yeah. And actually, this summer, or I guess this summer, one of the things I did during quarantine was take Yale's free course. I forgot what it's called now, but basically allowed you to kind of figure out your strengths and weaknesses. And one of the things that I've learned was my number one strength was a love of learning. And I
Mm,
don't know if people realize like that can be a strength and it should be a strength for people moving forward. And thank you for sharing those book recommendations as well.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So
One thing you were talking about, sorry, Jay, just real quick, because it
Sure.
came up earlier in the conversation around like, people in positions, whether it's a school counselor or a teacher or a manager, just knocking people's dreams down. And it starts to get me to start thinking around like, why are people in positions of power unimaginative? And this is going to sound crazy, but I bet if we got rid of a biweekly paycheck, that that would go away too. And people would support dreams and visions, and because they would have their own dreams and visions of how to survive. That's kind of an abstract thought, but just in this conversation I was thinking about that.
yeah, it's so true. And there are just so many ways to better leverage the talent that we have. I remember when I was at FedEx, one of the issues that I had when I was running the dock was you have all these trucks to load. Some people are loading two trucks, some people are loading three trucks. If you're really talented, I can have you loading four trucks, but they're all paid the same hourly rate.
Mm.
And so some people will say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I don't, why am I load three? He's only got two. And I'm, well, talent, and all this spinning. So I remember coming up with a concept that the contractors are paid based on the stop and the package and all these things. And so they get compensated based on their productivity. And I remember when I was at UPS, because I was UPS a decade and then FedEx a decade. When I was at UPS, on Fridays, driver's happy if he's light, right? Because, oh man, I'm going to get off early. So I remember being at FedEx, and it was a Friday, and this contractor comes in. I was like, hey, Jim. you're light today. And I was thinking he's going to be happy. He threw his lunch, said, I'm not going to make any money today. What a shift. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that really got me.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I came up with this concept about, paying the package handlers the same way. And so then, but it didn't get off the ground.
Mm.
But I did have that concept. But I do believe that, just structuring it in a certain, now, like you're saying, people, you get imaginative about what I can do because it's tied to, how I'm compensated. And then when someone comes in with a brilliant idea, and so how many companies have been started because someone comes in with a brilliant idea, gets shot down, and then they go across the street. And that's how State Farm got started. I don't know if you knew that story. Dean Merkelson. He worked for
Mm.
this small company, insurance company, is still in existence, and he had all these ideas. And finally, they pulled him into the room and said, "Hey, here's how we do business, and if you don't like it, you can go start your own insurance company." Somebody said that to him. And so,
Wow.
literally, the first State Farm agency was across the street.
As it should
And
be.
as it should be. And one person altered the destiny of that company by shooting him down, and they left billions of dollars on the table. I mean, that you're paying somebody, I don't know, I'm just assuming this manager was probably making at that time, 40 grand a year, and they cost that company billions of dollars by shooting down that idea, literally. And so that's the magnitude. I mean, it's an extreme example, but it's a true story.
Yeah, it does seem a little silly just to discount or put down someone's idea because they're in a junior position. I mean, yeah, there is something to be said for functionalizing roles and everyone having different responsibilities, but I feel like in a lot of big, very hierarchical organizations, if someone comes to the table, comes to management with a great idea, if they don't have that title next to them that gives them credibility, they don't get the time of day, and it just seems like a bad reason to turn down a good idea.
Oh, big time. And most companies don't have a mechanism to make sure that doesn't happen. So they have no idea how many ideas have walked out of the door because they don't have a mechanism in place to capture that. I always think about Babe Ruth, and everybody knows the curse of the Bambino,
Yeah,
for the Boston Red Sox and all those years. But they made a decision to trade him to the Yankees. And if you look at the numbers from when he went to the Yankees, and they got a new stadium now, but there's a reason why the old stadium, they call that the house that Ruth built.
for
Okay,
sure.
there's a reason. And so I know that they made that decision because they didn't know who Babe Ruth was. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
when they traded him, because that trade would not happen now. They wait, ooh, arguably the greatest baseball player that's ever lived,
Yeah.
arguably. And they traded him to the Yankees, and that's how the Yankees became the Yankees. You know what I mean?
But it's
And
wild
so,
because he was a really good pitcher on the Red Sox too.
great,
Yeah,
great pitch. He could have been a Hall of Fame pitcher,
there you
but he
go.
kept hitting all them home runs. They had to get him in the lineup every day. Yeah, but he was a great pitcher. I mean, that guy was gifted. And I remember some baseball player, you know, local guy, not a local guy, but a late guy here in the last few years. Oh, Babe Ruth, I'd strike him out. I was like, he he'd hit he'd hit it out of the stadium against you, man, because he had that kind of talent. And
Yeah,
the juice baseball and this little ballpark and the mound, you don't have the nasty breaking balls that he saw, and he'd take you. You guys would be walking him 3 times a game,
for
because he'd be
sure.
bouncing them off the scoreboard all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, he still hit a baseball farther than anyone in history. 700, I want to say it was 714 feet or something crazy. It's over 700 feet he hit a baseball, measured.
really.
And that's not the juice baseball they're playing with today. So,
Yeah, those were dead back in the day, and they were
dead
muddied
ball,
up. Yeah,
dead ball area hit 700 feet. I'm just saying.
but
Yeah, yeah.
and all of this actually kind of shows like life works for you, doesn't work against you, and it's so hard to think about that in the moment. But all these little examples that you just gave, and I shouldn't say little examples, all these examples that you just gave, um, prove that.
Yes, yes. And it does. And like you said, when you have that mindset that understands this is not happening to me, this is happening for me, it's a huge shift and all that. And because some of these things, as you know, they're so difficult, you wouldn't willingly go through it.
Yeah.
would not willingly go
Yeah.
through it. They're like, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what? How many years? No, I'm not signing up for that. But when you grow through it instead of go through it, then a lot of magic happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to ask you, because you've been asking or talking about football, who had more to do with the Patriots' success, Brady or Belichick?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. And so here's what I know for sure. Greatest quarterback of all times, Tom Brady.
Okay.
That's just, and I'm not a huge Tom Brady fan or anything. He's the greatest. I'm just saying. He's unbelievable in what he's done. And he's worked. I mean, can you imagine if he had the physical ability of Michael Vick, what he could do? I mean, he's just his physical talent. He's an average guy, you know,
Yeah.
but his mindset and his work ethic and his acumen for the game is legendary. So I think because of that position, and you think about this, great quarterbacks are rarer than fighter pilots. I mean, that's one of the most rare positions in the world. So I think without Tom Brady, they don't have all those nine appearances I think and six
Right.
rings. They don't have all those appearances without him, for sure. I think Belichick is the greatest coach in this modern era. But I remember something Gino Ariema said. He's a coach of the Yukon Lady Huskies, and he said, he's young. I'm a coach, and he's like, yeah, I know all this basketball and this and that. He said, but it didn't take me very long. He said, only 2 or 3 years, and I figured out. He said, you can be the best coach in the world, and if you don't have the players, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
doesn't matter
exactly.
because players play. They
Yeah.
win, right? What is it? What is that? I think it was Chris Carter said, "Hey, you need a dude that throws it to another dude." Right? I mean, you got to have a couple dudes, and I mean, and that's how you win football games. I mean, it's just that simple. So, yeah, he doesn't. It doesn't happen without Tom Brady. Didn't happen before Tom Brady, and obviously, it's not happening after Tom Brady. Just saying.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
it comes full circle with your comments around attracting the right talent, right? You could be the best CEO or manager in the world, but if you're sending the wrong people out the right people out the door, then you'll miss the opportunity to have a great team.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, and this is something I think that most companies miss the mark when they track their turnover. They always track their turnover in aggregate, don't they? Well, last year we turned over 15%, and this year we only turned over 10%. So we're better. Is that really true? And then if they're really sophisticated, they do it by department, or then they do it by position. But you have to know that when Michael Jordan left the Chicago Bulls, that was one guy
Yeah.
completely changed the fortune. Tom Brady leaving the Patriots, one guy completely changed the fortunes, right? So you've got to understand the impact that a specific human being has on your organization. You got to have a way to quantify that, and that's really huge. And you see examples on and on. Babe Ruth, one guy. So there's some people out there that Steve Jobs, right? One guy. There's some people out there that just have something special about them, and when you get them, you got to keep
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
You got to do everything you can to keep them.
It also works the other way. One guy can set the tone.
One guy, yeah, set
Yeah.
the tone all the
Yeah.
time, and it's just so important because it does. It really resonates with people, and you've got to understand that because it's a domino effect in that this one influencer and phew, it ripples through the whole team, and that's positive or negative. And because you can have some people that are so negative that it really brings down the morale, therefore their productivity, loyalty, everything goes down with it. And it could be one person being at the catalyst of that position. So it's huge to just understand the human dynamic. I mean, we spend so much time in business on processes and marketing and strategy. And how much time do we spend understanding the common denominator in all of it, which is human beings? That should be the start and the finish of anything that we do. And somehow it keeps getting pushed over here, left behind But any organization right now that's tremendously flourishing, they have that firmly placed on their radar.
I wonder if part of that is just because human beings are so complicated. People don't want to admit they may be out of their depth when they're talking about them. So it's easier to talk about the quarterly reports and sort of the
Oh,
numbers, right?
so true. I had a guy, a prospect I was working on, and I had this people success formula. And again, it's a meta analysis. It took me 30 years to figure this formula out. And it's based on this massive meta analysis that I put together. And so it's 10 principles. So I remember sitting before this prospect, and he's like, "Well, Dr. Charlie, I believe everything you're saying, but he said, I think your formula is too complicated." And I just scratched my head because I'm like, people are complicated. Like for me to get it down to 10 is incredible. Now 10 of those, 6 of those have exponents, but still, to get it to 10 principles,
Sure.
that if I get these 10 principles right, I'm going to resonate with 95 to 98% of the people on this planet. That's pretty good.
Y-
But guess what? 37 trillion cells that are independently intelligent, people are complicated.
Yeah.
It's now it's complicated.
Yeah, 10 is pretty darn good. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that's genius, right? Charlie Mingus said that, right? To take the complex and make it simple, amazingly simple. That's genius. He says every day people are taking simple things and making them complicated, but you can take something complex and make it simple. That's real genius.
Mm.
So yeah, sorry, people are complex,
yeah,
but it
and
creates a
people
lot of
can
opportunity because of that.
Hmm.
for sure, and people can find your principles online.
Yeah, if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see the people success formula over my head. One of my friends says, "Looks like a work of art." I said, "It kind of is. It's an art and a science to it." But I have those principles up there, and I share them with my clients, and it's pretty awesome. Pretty
Well, this
awesome.
has been awesome too. And if there's one person that, both Jay and I were super thrilled to have to start November, it was you. So, thank you for oozing out positivity, but also all the wisdom that you shared today. I know I have a bunch of takeaways and things that I can learn from personally. So that's a selfish statement to say, but I think the audience can take a lot from this as well.
Well, it's just been a pleasure to be here, and I'm just excited to talk to you both today, and it's an honor to be here on this first Monday of November.
Thank you, Dr. Charlie.